PI. Thank you for inviting me to come and have a chat with you. I think I'm coming here merely because I was involved heavily in 2005, what we call a work or draft, which we tried to campaign for after writing it and didn't succeed. And then I was heavily involved with although I was not a member of the Constitutional Committee led by Gitonga, that came out with the 2010 Constitution. I wrote many papers to that committee, which at times I went to defend. Sometimes most of the people who talk to me will probably find being biased, that Kenya ended up with a pure presidential system. I think the committee members, if Wako was present, could very well confirm that, in fact, the change from a mixed breed of constitution came the last week. People had to leave here to Naivasha, and I talked to then the president, Mwai Kibaki, and tried to convince him that if he goes back to history of Lancaster House, Kanu government then, led by Jomo Kenyatta, was being advised by the Chief Justice, one of the retired Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and they had a pure presidential system. And then there was the Kadu Constitution, which was pure presidential system. And Kanu was not succeeding in getting their system around, because the other one was operated by the settlers within the country. And they almost came back without independence. And the very, very last moment is late Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who convinced Kenyatta that they abandoned their pure presidential system, take over Kadu's parliamentary system, and when they come and get the flag up, they will change the constitution. And that's actually what exactly happened, to make a long story short. And, but they changed it after getting independence. They changed only the two little things, which they, instead of Kenyatta, you remember he was the first prime minister. He was changed to president by making the country republic, merely changing a few words here and there. And literally that's all that was changed. So we remained with a mixed system of both the parliamentary and presidential system, which then, of course, was kind of loose and could be amended at the whim of the president at that time. And and you do remember quite a number of amendments that were made that literally turned the constitution into a dictatorial system. I convinced the president that we should go for pure presidential system. Then he asked me to go and convince Laila. And Laila, because I used to work with his father very closely, particularly during the Young Turks, when we were fighting for second liberation. I invited Raila for lunch, and we were late. I invited the late Honorable Jenga Karume. He came with Olengo in Selena, and it was just 1 week to go to Naivasha, and I convinced Raila that his father was for pure presidential system, and he should support it. Because you remember that time, PNU were looking for kind of Tanzanian model, and Raila and Ruto were in another group, ODM, convinced on a pure parliamentary system. So anyway, I convinced them, and that's how actually it was introduced in Naivasha, and how it became. However, when it came out of it, because it was never fully discussed, although they ended up with a pure presidential system, it was not detailed to be able to work, and in fact they defined it as US model. We did not end up with a document that is pure presidential system, US model. Because you remember, in fact, when they came from Naivasha, they didn't even know that they should have a Senate. When they went to KIA, they said, you decided that you will come with a pure, you came from Naivasha with a pure presidential system, but you have no Senate. So they said you must make a Senate to be dealing with the counties. What is generally known that in the world there are only 3 systems of government. Either pure presidential system, the US model, and it's practiced in US, and it's democratic. And there is pure parliamentary system, and it's practiced in UK, in Canada, in Australia, and in one of the greatest country, or the biggest country, or either by population, India, practices parliamentary system, and is the biggest democracy in the world. So both systems, these 2 systems, can be democratic. The only other bad system of government that is known is when you mix the 2, or you call it a dictatorial or authoritarian system. There is no other systems of government known. So let's now come to Kenya, our problem. What I'm hearing more is that this system has not worked purely because right from the beginning we were built by our colonizers as a tribal grouping. In a tribal grouping, we had always argued that a parliamentary system cannot work, and that's what we tried effectively. Although a few amendments, we actually tried a parliamentary system for those 50 years, during Kenyatta time, and during Moi's time, and Patrick Bake's time, and all the struggle that we got into is purely that this system did not work. It was purely a dictatorial system, and why most of Kenyans have to lose their lives and shed blood to be able to change it. Because it is freedom. And if you want any country to develop, it has to have that freedom. To be able to, for all human beings are born with certain brains of their own, and they got to be set free to use them in their own country. And remember that whatever you do in your country, it is for your own good. And secondly, it's for your family. And if you are doing good for yourself and your family, you are actually doing good for your country. So there is no argument about that you have to let people be able to develop themselves and use their brains. So to me, I think that's where we start. It is the problem of tribal grouping, and it comes out more during election time, because all elections, particularly of the president, now let's forget about the parliamentary system, because the parliamentary system is based on political parties, and the leader of the majority, who gets majority in parliament, becomes the prime minister. But on a presidential system, on a tribal grouping, it seems not to work, because the presidential candidates, and this is how we have been developed, seems to depend purely on their own communities. And if, of course, I win the election, or those who have won elections, they now concentrate on for those who voted for him, and forget that the other, assumes the others were all against him, and they didn't vote for him, and for that reason, he abandons them. This is where the winner-take-all theory that is coming from. So, for me, we created a very good constitution. If we can eliminate tribalism in Kenya, if we can eliminate stealing of elections in Kenya, and all communities work together in Kenya, there is nothing wrong in the pure presidential system. It would work perfectly well, and it would probably help in trying to make sure that the tribes are no longer, separate. They don't seem distinctly separate. They'll be able to join together. The problem in Kenya has purely come because elections, and I have been involved in 1992 election, 1997 election, 2002 election, 2007 election, 2012, 2013 election. All of them I have been involved in elections, in those elections, particularly in taking statistics, in dealing with the statistics of voters, that, and I can sit here and guarantee you that there is no election that was not meddled with one way or the other. If somebody wants to hang me, if I'm unable to prove that, I'm ready to be hanged, because I have statistics in computers and I keep them clearly. So, if we can eliminate, we can come up with a system which has started purely by this handshake. Remember, the handshake has only started because of the problem that it came to the maximum. This problem that has been developing all along, it came to its maximum after the repeat of 2017 election. And this is what has brought us the handshake. And just like Kibaki, President Kibaki brought us 2010 Constitution, and we went to Uhuru Park, and raised the tap, and we were all happy that Kenya is free forever. We slowly after that went slowly and went back to almost where probably was off. And we ended up with 2017 election, which put us in literally almost all this country together. And now we have the handshake. And I guess this committee is there to build on the handshake, to see whether we can return this country that we care for so much back together, communities together. I don't believe that going back to parliamentary system will solve the problem, because any one of these systems, no matter which one you try, you know, parliamentary system, we tried it for 50 years, it didn't work. This one has been in there for 9 years. We should probably give it a little more time, but there are things that were not done, which I believe that can be corrected through maybe a referendum or maybe whatever, and I can mention a few of them. For example, for a system, for checks and balances to work, or a pure presidential system to work, the two houses, the three branches of government, particularly the three branches of, excluding judiciary first, the executive, the legislature, there should be the register between the Senate and the House of Representatives. I mean, we call it the National Assembly, but in the US they call it House of Representatives. The National Assembly, the Senate, the board should be registratures. In other words, we don't emphasize upper house, but emphasize the fact that there is no bill of law. There is no making of law unless it is approved by the two houses, by the three branches of government. If a bill starts in the Senate, it should be debated, passed. It should go to the National Assembly, debated and passed, before it goes to the President for signature. If it starts from National Assembly, it should go and passed. It should go to the Senate before it goes to the President. Of course, the executive also starts bills. If they started from the Senate, debated and passed, must go to the House, the National Assembly, debated and passed, before it goes back to him for signature to pass. As long as each bill is passed independently, and these houses become totally independent, that they are not a branch of the executive or a branch of the other one, there will be no problem. So we probably could amend the Constitution to give legislative powers to the Senate, whether you want to call it upper house or whatever the case may be, and House of Representatives or the National Assembly knows its role to represent the people. It's because even in a parliamentary system, and we know the UK, although it is not emphasized, we have House of Lords, which is kind of equivalent to Senate somewhere. I think that kind of an amendment would work. I think that's what probably is lacking. To further, if we are able to do that, and then try to sort out our election systems, how we elect the president, because all these years that we struggled to get a new constitution, Kenyans loudly, I think through S.K loudly said they want to elect their own president. So now to tell them back that they want to have you take them back to a leader who is not directly elected, one man, one vote. To me, it will be a little difficult for Kenyans who will probably be going backward instead of going forward. So we can figure out a better system of electing the president and using one man, one vote, and trying to shift it from tribal grouping. And we can very well do it. I'm going to throw out a suggestion. It's not mine. I'm sure many people will give their own suggestion, but if I was to design it myself, I would do it just like US and have an electoral system based on the constituencies, to make sure that our allocate electoral votes which are not human, so that the candidates who win in a constituency, the popular vote, they take a number of electoral votes, and electoral votes, I will set a number to make sure that every person to win the presidency has reached that maximum, and it will be part of the constitution of the electoral vote. That's why in the US you can see Hillary had something like 29 million votes over Trump, but Trump got the electoral votes right. This would allow for Kenya, although we are small, not big states like the US, but we have the constituencies, just simple mathematics, to make sure that a presidential candidate will go and campaign in every constituency. So he has to go to Nyanza if he's a Kikuyu, if he is a rural like Laila. For him to win the presidential election, he has to go to Kalenjin land, he has to go to Kikuyu land, he has to go to Kambani. That without doing it, there is no way one can win an election. So I would come up with a definition of some kind of system, but with a name to break tribal election.